With the 2024 Game Awards coming to an end, there's a lot of people upset by the results. ASTRO BOT was crowned as the Game of the Year, and there is a lot of people who are not very happy about it. But here's where I come in. Now, this is going to make me sound like a loser, because I am, but if you're someone who plays a lot of video games and is pretty tuned in with the gaming scene, ASTRO BOT was always the clear winner. It has the best chance to win out of all the nominees, and it shouldn't be a surprise that it won it all. But I don't expect you to take me at my word, so I'll go through each of the nominees in order from least to most likely to win and explain why they didn't win Game of the Year. And while of course this is my opinion, I really do think I'm pretty spot on here. And keep in mind that these rankings are not inherently a reflection of the game's quality. Each of the nominees were great in their own ways, and whichever one you like the most is completely up to you. And a quick reminder on how the Game Awards work, it's not purely decided by fan voting. The Game of the Year winner is decided by a combination of fan voting and a private jury, with that jury's decision holding most of the poll. The category is defined as recognizing a game that delivers the absolute best experience across all creative and technical fields. So the winner needs to meet that definition. Now with that in mind, let's get to the nominees.
You wanna be my friend? I have a lot of friends.
In last place is Balatro. Balatro never even had the tiniest chance. Balatro is an indie card game. The game was incredibly well received and had a chokehold on indie gamers this year. Its quality is clearly reflected in the awards it did take home. But Balatro never had a chance. A small indie title that is simple but intuitive, while Balatro excels on what it does do, it doesn't really meet any of the categories for what a Game of the Year has to embody. It's not innovative to the gaming space, it's not pushing boundaries, it's not technologically impressive, it's not genre-defining, it's not expressing a story or giving a refined AAA experience. Balatro is simply Balatro. And yeah, Balatro is great, but it's not Game of the Year. And while 2024 was definitely not a bad year for video games, Balatro only just managed to sneak onto the nominees this year, and it would never get the nomination in a stronger year. While I'm writing the script for this, it keeps trying to autocorrect Erdtree to Nerdtree. I don't know why it's doing that, but it's so funny. Anywho, at number 5 is Elden Ring, Shadow of the Erdtree.
Those stripped of the grace of gold shall all meet death. In the embrace of Mesmer's flame.
While Shadow of the Erdtree was a fantastic DLC that definitely had all the makings of a Game of the Year, it never had a chance. Shadow of the Erdtree was received incredibly well, had glowing critic reviews, was visually stunning, and provided an incredibly fun experience. But at the end of the day, it's still a DLC. The fact that it was nominated in the first place is already highly controversial. You can argue about whether it should have been eligible or not in the comments. In my opinion, it shouldn't be. But regardless of what you think, the DLC's success is already contingent on the success of the source game. Being a DLC, Shadow of the Erdtree is inherently not its own game. It has the same gameplay as the base game, uses the same resources, has a built-in player base, and doesn't deviate far from the base game. It offers a bunch of great new content for sure, but it's just more of a game that already exists. It's not a bold defining release in the industry. It's not pushing any boundaries. It's just more of what's already great and already works. And while it was already a bold move to nominate it at all, to give it the Game of the Year award would have been a disaster. The optics are simply terrible, and it would have been a really bad look for the Game Awards. You think people are mad now? Imagine that future. It would never happen.
Who deserves his crown? A man of proven strength!
How dare you, scoundrel! Your words verge on treason!
Against what ruler, Blue Blood? The dead cannot be betrayed. Let your late King Saul bear witness. Let Louis Squeerburn be named the true and rightful ruler of Uchronia.
At number 4, we have Metaphor Refantazio. And just to gauge where we are right now, I'd say Metaphor had a measly 5% chance to win. Basically nothing. And again, this isn't a direct reflection of the game's quality, because there are a lot of things you need to consider. Metaphor is a massive 60-ish hour JRPG experience made for JRPG fans. It doesn't have the reach that a Game of the Year needs to have. Look to prior winners like Elden Ring, Baldur's Gate 3, and even Overwatch. These games were all phenomena in the industry that took the gaming world by storm. They were all massively and incredibly influential. And while not every winner is as massively popular as these three games, Metaphor doesn't even have an ounce of that star power. Metaphor was made with an audience in mind. It's one of the biggest, boldest, and most dynamic JRPGs ever. If you're a fan of the genre, this game is a masterclass in excellence. I really do believe that Studio Zero and Alice knocked it out of the park here, but at the same time, the massive scale of the game and anime-inspired art style already isolate a massive base, and while Metaphor is a perfect game for JRPG fans, it's not going to be the game to pull other people into that genre if they're not already familiar with it. There is just simply a large portion of gamers, and by extension voters, who just had never even heard of the game, and even for those who had heard of it, they brushed it off without even considering giving it a shot because it's so different from their usual games, and it doesn't have much casual appeal. So regardless of how fantastic Metaphor is, it's arguably the most overlooked title of all the nominees, and a game that is unfortunately irrelevant when it comes to the larger gaming scene, and especially a game that's completely foreign to the casual market, has no chance at winning. Not this year, and probably not any other year either. Now we start getting into the games that really started to have a shot at the gold. Black Myth Wukong was one of, if not the biggest game this year. It dominated the gaming scene for a short time after it was released and was received highly by fans. Its unique take on the Souls formula opened the game up to a much larger audience that was maybe too intimidated by the classic Souls formula. Black Myth was able to succeed in both the casual gamer and dedicated gamer audiences. The gameplay is smooth and refined and offers a fun new spin on the action Souls-like formula. The game is visually pretty, it has a unique art style and art direction from drawing from Chinese mythology to give that game its distinct identity. Black Myth Wukong is also important for the gaming scene and industry as it offers a taste of what Chinese developers have to offer in the market. It's a new perspective that we don't get to see very often, and I hope that it paves the way for more foreign developers outside of just Japan to enter the gaming market in a big way. But while Black Myth Wukong was generally well received by fans, it wasn't received amazingly. For a lot of Souls fans, Black Myth Wukong was an amazing game that earned incredibly high praise, but there was an equally large portion of players who thought the game was good, but not great. This sentiment is reflected in the critic reviews too, with Black Myth Wukong reviewing positively across the board, but nowhere near as good as any of the other nominees. In fact, Black Myth Wukong is the lowest rated game to ever get a Game of the Year nomination. And while you may think it's a stupid metric to judge the game by, remember that the majority of the decision for the winner is up to a private jury of gaming critics. So a game that is good, but not great, unfortunately doesn't reach the level that a Game of the Year needs to be at. And that's all without even mentioning the controversy surrounding this game. Although if this was your pick for the winner, I don't blame you. It did win the player's choice after all. The way I'll word it is like this. While Wukong was far from a bad game, in a stronger year like 2023, it probably would have either just scraped onto the nominees or not got a nominee at all. Final Fantasy VII Rebirth hits at our number 2 spot. To say this game was received positively is an understatement. It received glowing reviews across the board by both gamers and critics alike. The gameplay is innovative in the JRPG space, it has an amazing story to tell, it's visually stunning, it has a beautiful score to accompany it, and it technologically pushes the gaming scene, making the most of the next generation of gaming. Aside from the good reception, it also had the popularity to win. This game was huge when it released, and was so huge that it even took home the most anticipated game award at the 2023 Game Awards. There's two big things holding back FF7R though, and that are its genre and its nature. These two factors are what held it back from winning Game of the Year this year. Starting with its genre, like I said from Metaphor Refantazio, JRPGs are just a divisive genre of games. There's a lot of people who shy away from JRPGs for a number of reasons, especially here in the West. The anime style only goes to exemplify this. A massive JRPG video game just unfortunately doesn't appeal to a large portion of gamers, especially when it comes to more casual gamers, which are a massive portion of gamers, although Final Fantasy is probably as mainstream as the genre has ever been and will ever get. And even though I wish people would branch out and give JRPGs a try, since JRPGs are my personal favorite genre of video games, it's just not reality. And the second factor that held FF7R back is the nature. It is a remake of an already existing game. Now, a quick aside, I personally want to push back on this. If you showed me the Silent Hill 2 remake in the original Silent Hill 2, I'd agree that it's clearly a remake and probably shouldn't be eligible. I feel the same way about Persona 3 Reload, which also released this year. But look at Final Fantasy VII, and now look at Rebirth. This is not the same game, dude. The gameplay is completely overhauled. The visuals are completely overhauled. There's tens of hours of new content. It's telling a new story around the game's original story. If anything, I'd say Rebirth is an adaptation of the original FF7 rather than a remake. But regardless of how I personally feel, it is, officially speaking, a remake. I mean, remake is literally in the title of the first game. And because of that, I think there's definitely some hesitance on the part of the Game Awards when it comes to it potentially being Game of the Year. So with all that out of the way, all we're left with is ASTRO BOT. ASTRO BOT meets all our categories perfectly. It's a platformer game which gives it a large appeal to a ton of different types of people, and makes full use of the new console generation in a bunch of unique ways through the PlayStation controller's technology. It has an amazing soundtrack that perfectly captures its identity, the level design is fun and dynamic, the visuals are great, the gameplay is simple but dynamic, it's appropriate for all age demographics so it can be played by kids and families, and the inclusion of PlayStation character cameos adds a fun element to reward older players too. The game also created a lot of buzz when it came out and was well received by players and reviewed incredibly well with critics. It's a fun game that anybody can jump right into and have a blast with, and it succeeds exceptionally in every area. And that's why it was our clear winner from the beginning. Not because it's necessarily heads and shoulders better than every other nominee, but because it manages to be a fantastic game that isn't held back by any of the cons holding back the other games. As far as some of the reactions I'm seeing online, I'll address some of the more common ones. Number 1, people complaining that it's a baby game. Listen, it's a fun platformer, man. It's chill and silly and whimsical. Just a good time. It's impossible not to have a smile on your face when you're playing this. If you can't get over yourself because it's a baby game, that's sad. You're either miserable or a 15-year-old doomer. It's not that deep. Number 2, it's a glorified tech demo. What a reductive thing to say. The way that ASTRO BOT utilizes all the features of the PS5 is awesome. Come on, it's so cool. This game makes my controller do things I didn't even know it could do. I feel like this one is just Xbox players upset that their controller still needs batteries. Number 3, it's just a Mario clone. It's called a platformer. It's a genre. Yeah, this field is dominated by Mario. So if anything, it's a super good thing that we have a non-Nintendo platformer doing so well. And even as a platformer, it plays nothing like any Mario game. As far as platformers go, there really is nothing quite like ASTRO BOT. It's a really unique and fun experience. Number 4, it only won because platformers are so popular and platformer fans vote bombed it. That's not how the decision works. And number 5, an exclusive should not be eligible for Game of the Year. Now, this is the first one that I think is actually a really valid complaint to have. Sure, I can see how the winner of being an exclusive to a single console can feel really frustrating. But the thing about this complaint is that I don't believe that you actually care about this. Now, if this is genuinely how you feel, I think that's fair. But the same crowd that's saying this after Astro Bot won over Elden Ring and Wukong is the same group that were pushing for Spider-Man 2 last year, another PlayStation exclusive. But you didn't see any complaints like this last year because they wanted it to win. Even though, like I said at the beginning about Astro Bot, if you're a big gamer who's in tune with the gaming scene, Spider-Man 2 never had a chance. And it's not only unsurprising that it lost, but it's not surprising that it didn't win a single award either.
And the game of the year is... Astro Bot!
Astro Bot definitely deserved to win this year. If you have a PlayStation and haven't played it yet, I totally recommend it. It's a game that literally anyone could have a blast with. And it was also my vote for Game of the Year, even though it wasn't my personal Game of the Year. If you liked the video, give your mom a kiss for me and click like. Thank you, and good night.